Hi everyone, Casey here. Welcome back to my channel, Casey on Location. In this video, I'm going to compare two different popular podcasting devices. Over here is the very compact, hand-holdable Zoom PodTrak P4. Over there is the much larger Rode Rodecaster Pro. So which podcasting device makes my voice sound better? Let's find out. For this video, I am filming this with the Canon Vixia G60 4K camcorder. It's a great 4K camcorder with its large 1-inch sensor. I have the G60 camcorder set for its highest 4K video quality setting. And why am I doing this, you might ask? It's because gearheads always want to see the maximum quality a camera can shoot at. I love you guys. For the audio, I've been using the amazing and tiny Rode Wireless Go lavalier system, which I've been using for the past couple years. The Rode wireless transmitter is attached to my collar right here. I'm simply using the microphone built into the transmitter. There is no external wired lav mic attached. The Rode Wireless Go receiver is attached to the Canon G60 via the mic in port. On the G60 camera, I have the audio manually set at 35 for the gain level. On the Rode receiver, I have the gain level set at its lowest setting. For the test comparison, I will be reading a couple paragraphs from a local news article. I'm going to use the same microphone, which is the popular Rode PodMic, which is always back-ordered everywhere. Here is the Rode PodMic. I will use the same PodMic on both the Zoom PodTrak P4 as well as the Rode Rodecaster Pro for the test recording. I will also read the same paragraph using this custom-fit windscreen designed for the Rode PodMic. So maybe you might hear a difference with and without using this windscreen attached. In post-processing, I will need to remove the original audio from this video being recorded using the Rode Wireless Go microphone and replace it with the audio recorded from the PodTrak P4 and the Rode Rodecaster. Let's first start with the Zoom PodTrak P4. I will have the gain dial knob set to 6, which I find is ideal most of the time for recording volume level. So right here on channel 1, I have it set to 6, and I only have one microphone attached, which is into channel 1 right now. The other channels 2, 3, and 4 are not being used. Therefore, I have the gain dial knobs set to 0 for channels 2, 3, and 4. For any channels that are not being used, you want to have the gain dial set to 0 so that it will not introduce any unwanted background noise, even though those channels have no microphone attached and even though they're not being used. So again, my channel 1 level is set for 6 on the gain dial, and all the other unused channels are at 0. My goal while recording is that I want to see the vertical decibel bars hit around 75 to 80% of maximum, which equals approximately the same as -6 decibels to -12 decibels, which is the ideal recording level. Here is an example of what I mean by hitting 75 to 80% of maximum while speaking into the Rode PodMic attached to channel 1. So here is the Rode PodMic right here, and I'm going to be speaking into it now. Hello, testing 1, 2, 3, and let me just zoom in the camera here more closely on the LCD screen so you can really see. Okay, there we go. So hello, mic check 1, 2, 3, mic check 1, 2, 3. So notice that as I'm speaking into the microphone, I have a little pen here that shows that you want to be right about at the 75% to 80% of maximum, and this is the ideal recording level right about here where these vertical bars are hitting at. And just to show, you do not want to be at 0. 0 decibels is where at the very top of the screen, which means you're clipping, otherwise known as peaking, and you're blowing out the audio and it's too high. So here's an example of too high. Hello! So you'll see that those vertical bars went to the very top of the screen. That's way too high. And conversely, you don't want to be speaking so low either. So if you're speaking, for example, with the gain dial too low, such as like set to 2 or 3 or 4, or maybe you're speaking too low into the microphone, or maybe speaking too far away from the microphone, because ideally you want to be speaking very closely into the microphone, such as maybe like around 3 to 4 inches away. So you'll see that these vertical decibel bars are really low. I mean, it's like at the 25% level, which means the recording level is also too low. So again, you want to be right about here. So now we're about 75 to 80% of maximum, and that is the ideal recording level right here, with these vertical bars are hitting right about now. And the other thing that I want to mention as well, let me just zoom in a little farther down here. Ideally, you want your headphone in volume to be right around maybe 5 or 6 maximum. And the reason I say that is because if you have your volume setting too high, such as 7, 8, 9, then you will be deceived into thinking that your audio level for recording is sufficient, when in fact it really might be that your recording level is set too low, and because you have your headphone volume too high, therefore you're listening through your headphones at a very high volume, thinking that is an appropriate recording level when it's not. So I suggest having the volume knob here set to about no higher than 6. I mean, unless you're hard of hearing, you know, you're kind of semi-deaf, I suggest not to have it any more than 6. But regardless, the more important thing is that you want to be monitoring your decibel scale right here. And by the way, you'll also note that there are no numbers for decibel readings. In other words, there's nothing that says, for example, 0 or -6 or -12 or -18, such as what they have on the other Zoom recorders, such as the Zoom H6 or Zoom H5 or etc. All of those other recorders have decibel number scales that you can tell where exactly your vertical bars are hitting. So in this case, because there's no numbers, that's why I had to say hit roughly about 75 to 80% of maximum on the vertical bars here, which is roughly about -6 to -12 on the decibel scale, which is the ideal recording level. And so I just wanted to point that out. That's very important, and if you can consistently hit right around this level while recording here for the vertical decibel bars, you will be at the perfect recording level. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to show is that on the Zoom PodTrak P4, there's not really any audio effects built into it. The only thing available is the low cut and limiter functions. Both the low cut and limiter functions are defaulted to the on position for all microphones, channels 1, 2, 3, and 4 out of the box. So I normally keep both of those on, and I'll do the same for this test. And let me show you what I mean by that. So let me just zoom out here a little more. So here is the menu button right here. I'm going to press the menu button, and then you'll see where it says mic settings right here. Press the record button, otherwise known as the enter button, to access that. And then you'll see two things here where it says mic settings on top. You'll see low cut and limiter. So let's scroll up to where it says low cut. By the way, there are buttons here. To the right of the menu button, there's another button, which is the play pause button. That's also the up button. And over to the right of that is a stop button, otherwise known as the down scroll button. And then to the right of that, of course, is the red record button, otherwise known as the enter button. So right now, I already have it highlighted to low cut. So I'm going to press the record/enter button. And then you'll see here where it says low cut, mic 1, 2, and 3. And they all have this check mark on, which means the low cut filter is enabled. When I press the down arrow button, you'll see mic 4 revealed, and that it's also enabled for the low cut filter. So I usually just leave all of this on while I'm recording. I find it a benefit. and it's automatically set this way out of the box when you buy the PodTrak P4. So let me press the enter button right here to go back page, and then now I'm going to scroll down to limiter and press the enter button. And for the limiter, it's the same thing. Mic 1, 2, 3 have the check mark, which is enabled for the limiter function to be on. When I scroll down to mic 4, it's also enabled as well. So let me just press the menu button again to go back. So what I wanted to point out here is that there really is no audio effects that's built into the Zoom PodTrak P4 other than these mic settings of having the low cut and limiter filter enabled. Okay, let's get started with the testing. For the first test, I'm going to be speaking into the Rode PodMic. I will not be using the custom fit windscreen for the first test, and I'll be recording into the Zoom PodTrak P4. So I'm going to do a little triple clap to synchronize the audio in post-editing. So let me just press the record button here and clap my hands, I don't know, 2 or 3 times for post-syncing. Okay, here's the news. San Francisco Mayor London Breed and Public Health Director Dr. Grant Colfax did what they said multiple times this year that they didn't have to want to do, which is roll back the reopening of businesses after already opening them. Due to spiking cases and hospitalizations around the region, and what Colfax says is an even sharper spike than what the city saw in late June and early July prior to a summer surge, the city is ordering all indoor dining to cease. Okay, now I'm going to add the windscreen here to the PodMic. All right, San Francisco Mayor London Breed and Public Health Director Dr. Grant Colfax did what they said multiple times this year that they didn't want to have to do, which is roll back the reopening of businesses after already opening them. Due to a spike in cases and hospitalizations around the region, and what Colfax says is an even sharper spike than what the city saw in late June and early July prior to a summer surge, the city is ordering all indoor dining to cease. Okay, so that's the test for the Rode PodMic, speaking into the PodTrak P4 with and without the windscreen filter on. Okay, moving on to the Rode Rodecaster Pro. Here's the Rodecaster unit right here, and you'll notice immediately that if I were to put up the Zoom PodTrak P4 against the Rodecaster, I mean, look at the size difference. The Zoom PodTrak P4 is meant to be very compact and hand-holdable and transportable so that you can pretty much travel around town anywhere with it. Whereas the Rodecaster, due to its size, it's just a little bit too big to be able to carry it around town. I mean, it is possible. I do have the USB charging cable so that I can power the Rodecaster via an external battery pack, which I also have. But honestly, most of the time it just sits right here on my desk because it's just too large. So because of the Rodecaster being so much larger compared to the P4, you would expect the Rodecaster to have far greater audio processing and audio effects capabilities versus the PodTrak P4. And in fact, the Rodecaster does have a whole lot more audio effects built into it. And let me show you what I mean by that. So here is the Rode PodMic again. It's the same mic I used for recording into the Zoom PodTrak P4. It's now connected into channel 1 of the Rodecaster. There are no other microphones attached to it. I do have this secondary PodMic as well, but it's not attached to the Rodecaster. And right now on the front of the console, I have this vertical fader set at the halfway mark. And when I press this 1 button right here, which corresponds to channel 1, which I have the PodMic connected into, the LCD screen will show me various customizations and settings that are currently enabled and set for the Rode PodMic into channel 1. So let me just now zoom in on the screen here so that you can better see what I'm talking about. Okay, so now let me press that button right here that I was referring to. And then as soon as I do that, you will see this menu show up. So the first thing you'll notice is that where it says microphone here, there are a bunch of preset settings for various microphones, particularly for various Rode microphones. So here I have it enabled for the Rode PodMic. I mean, you just simply press the button. If I had the Rode, I don't know, Broadcaster, I would press that button instead. If I had just a generic dynamic microphone, then I would just press this button right here, dynamic. If I had a condenser, I would press that. In this case, I have the Rode PodMic attached, and I press that. So what's nice is that the Rodecaster now knows that I'm using the Rode PodMic, and it already has various preset functions set for the Rode PodMic that's ideally suited for the Rode PodMic. And now let me just go into this back screen button right here, and then you'll see that there are a couple other options available. So let me first show you what levels is right here. When I go into levels, you'll see that I currently have it set for 35. And what 35 is, let me just show you what I mean by that. So here's the Rode PodMic, okay? And I'm going to speak right into it right now. I'm speaking into the Rode PodMic, and you'll see that the vertical level bar is hitting in between or just barely in the middle of these two horizontal green bars. Ideally, you want it to be a little more over to the right-hand side. So I'm going to press this plus button here to have it go higher to, let's say, 45. So now as I'm speaking into the Rode PodMic, this horizontal green bar is further extended to the right of these two horizontal green bars, and that's where I prefer it. I think I just have better audio volume at this level. The maximum is 55, which I think is too high. I mean, I could use a microphone activator known as a Triton FET head, which I do have, but I'm not going to use it for this example because that'll be for another video test for another day. Anyways, let me just go in the back button here, and this right here where it says audio processing, this is where the magic happens. So when I press the audio processing, look at this. There is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different settings here. I'm gonna just put down the Rode PodMic before I speak anymore. All right, so right here is the first one. It says high pass filter. By the way, they're all enabled right now because this button right here where it says processing, it's currently moved over to the far right, which means they're all enabled, all these various buttons and effects. If I were to press it here on the left side, now you'll see that it's all disabled. So let me just go back to processing enabled for all of these settings, which it currently are all enabled. So the high pass filter, when I tap on that, you'll see that it's enabled. I have it at this setting right here. When I go to the back screen button here, the next one is noise gate. When I press noise gate, I mean, I have the threshold at this level, the attack at that level, the hold there, the release there, the range there. So this noise gate is enabled. Let me go with the back button. And the de-esser. For the de-esser, I have the threshold at this setting, a ratio at that, attack at that, and release at that setting. And this is also enabled for the de-esser. Go to the back button. And the compressor. These are all the compressor settings: threshold, ratio, attack, release, and gain. And that's kind of cool too, showing like these vertical bars right there for the compressor setting. Let me go back here, and this is even where more magic happens. So the APHEX button right here, when I press this guy, I have here, there's actually two settings here when I toggle left and right. The first one says Aural Exciter. I like the name. I have the tune set at this level, the harmonics set at that level, and the mix set at that level. So this adds to the enhancement of my voice. When I press this right button here, I get the big bottom. Oh yeah, this shows tune, drive, and mix. If I had to summarize what big bottom is, it gives me more of a bass effect. Kind of like that radio broadcast bassy kind of, I don't know, tune, audio, whatever, sound. So that's what big bottom means. Anyways, let me just go back screen. So these are all the different effects that the Rode Rodecaster has that the Zoom PodTrak P4 does not have. So this is a mix. So all of these effects are being mixed into the audio into the recording for when I'm speaking into it, to the microphone, for mixing into my voice recording. And typically, in order to get this type of effect, you would have to buy a separate mixing unit that might cost an extra couple $100 more. That's yet another accessory that you would have to get in order to have these types of effects. And this Rodecaster has all these effects built into it. So that's what's really cool about this Rode Rodecaster Pro unit, is that you get all of this audio effect built right into it. And I can choose to either use it or not use it. And for example, I can also selectively choose to only have, for example, noise gate on, de-esser on, but have the other ones off. So in other words, it's not like all or nothing. I can just, press the processing button to turn off everything and then go into noise gate and then just selectively enable one or more of these various effects. In my case, I just have everything on because I just like the sound of everything on. So anyways, I just wanted to show you what this has on the Rodecaster versus what a PodTrak P4 does not have. So that's what I wanted to show you there. Okay, now let's move on to the Rode Rodecaster Pro for doing our next audio test. And for this particular test, I'm actually going to do 3 separate tests. The first test is without having the windscreen attached to the Rode PodMic. The second test will be with the windscreen attached. And I've decided to also include a third extra test whereby I have all the audio effects turned off on the Rodecaster so that you'll just hear the audio without any of that Aural exciter, big bottom, noise gate, de-esser, any of that. That will all be turned off for the third test, so you can also see what that difference is like. The only thing I will do extra is I will leave the windscreen on for that third extra test. So let me just now press the record button here, and then I'll do a triple tap so I can sync the audio in post-processing later. And let me also put on my headphones so that I can hear what's going on here. All right, pressing the record button now. Okay, and today's local news. San Francisco Mayor London Breed and Public Health Director Dr. Grant Colfax did what they said multiple times this year that they didn't want to have to do, which is roll back the reopening of businesses after already opening them. Due to spiking cases and hospitalizations across the region, and what Colfax says is an even sharper spike than what the city saw in late June and early July prior to a summer surge, the city is ordering all indoor dining to cease. Okay, so that test is without the windscreen attached. So now for the second test, putting on the windscreen. Okay, here's the second test with the windscreen on. San Francisco Mayor London Breed and Public Health Director Dr. Grant Colfax did what they said multiple times this year that they didn't want to have to do, which is roll back the reopening of businesses after already opening them. Due to spiking cases and hospitalizations across the region, and what Colfax says is an even sharper spike than what the city saw in late June and early July prior to a summer surge. The city is ordering all indoor dining to cease. All right, so now I'm going to go into the audio of the LCD screen, press button number 1 here, and turn off the processing for everything. Okay, so now the processing button is off. The high pass filter is no longer on. The noise gate is no longer on. De-esser is no longer on. Compressor and the APHEX, which means Aural exciter, and the big bottom. So none of those are on. So let's do another test. And in local news, San Francisco Mayor London Breed and Public Health Director Dr. Grant Colfax did what they said multiple times this year that they didn't want to have to do, which is roll back the reopening of businesses after already opening them, due to spiking cases and hospitalizations across the region, and what Colfax says is an even sharper spike than what the city saw in late June and early July prior to a summer surge. The city is ordering all indoor dining to cease. Okay, I'm going to press the record button off now. So that was the test with the Rode Rodecaster. The first one, again, was with the windscreen off, but however, all the special audio effects were on, enabled on the Rodecaster. And then on the second test, I had the windscreen on, again with the all the special effects enabled on the Rodecaster. And then for this third test that we just finished, I turned off all of the special effects on the Rodecaster, but I did have the windscreen on. So that was the last test for the Rodecaster there. And that concludes this video. I hope you found this interesting and informative. Let me know in the comments if you noticed any difference and which recording you like better. Please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel, and I'll see you again next time.